Let's talk about the truth about exits and selling your startup. And I'm going to be a little more open and vulnerable and transparent about the truth about my exits because I share all the time that I'm a 7-time funded founder. That means I've raised institutional capital, I've raised investor money 7 times, outside investor money, not bootstrapped, and I've sold 2 companies. And I think that a lot of founders listen to that and they have some mixed responses, and I want to address that. This is the Founder Friday series. I'm not going to introduce myself. I'm not going to go through all the regular YouTube rigmarole. I'm just going to speak to you, my community, the founders that follow me, and I'm going to just share a more inside look as to what happens when it comes to being an advisor and being a founder. And this week, I was reflecting on my exits. It actually came up right at the beginning of the week, and I just kept mulling on it over and over again, and I thought it'd be a good topic to share. If you're looking for one of these snappy videos where you're going to get all the information and get the too long did not reads all up front, it's not going to happen. This is going to be kind of a story time video. I might ramble a little bit and share my true feelings on the matter. If you're up for it and you want to get to know me better, stick around. If you appreciate this type of stuff, let me know, because I want to know if I should continue on this series. I enjoy just sitting here talking sometimes, and that's what I'm going to do. Up front, the exits that I've had, the 2 of them, have been the best decisions of my life and the worst decisions of my life. And I want to explain something and get it out of the way. By no means did I exit, and am I humble bragging or bragging at all about my exits. I have not exited to a 9-figure payday. I don't have FU money. I didn't join the PayPal mafia. Any of those glorious stories that you're going to read about, that you see on these YouTube channels where people talk about selling their company and then they go on the podcast circuit. That's not me. I'm nowhere near that. While at the same time, I understand that it is a privilege. It is rare air to even exit a company, to sell a company, especially a startup. And I'm not minimizing what I did, because some of my exits were pretty cool. One of them in particular, which I'll share about. But I don't want anybody to think that exiting is something that I just take for granted. It's something very special. It's a privilege and an opportunity that has allowed me to build the foundation that I enjoy today, and I'm so grateful for those experiences. So I sit right in the middle when it comes to the exits. Part of me, I'm like, yeah, awesome, that was great. And then part of me was like, oh no, what did I do? Let me break it down for you. The first startup that I did was right out of college, and I had done other entrepreneurial ventures. My family owned video store franchises. I did a comic book company, an airbrush company. So I was always an entrepreneur before I went to college for animation digital art. And I was in college in Florida. When I was in school, I met an investor, and I looked over at his computer and I said, hey, you're doing that all wrong. And he turned out to be a wealthy individual, a high net worth individual who ended up going to school because he just loved going to school. And I ended up creating a relationship with him, and we began talking, and I found out that he had money. So I pitched him my idea. I said, hey, I got this idea for what I think is the future of entertainment, 3D animation, whatever you want to put back in the day. And this was right when .com 1.0 was really starting to take off and starting to tick. This was kind of the mid-90s, late 90s. And so he wrote me a check. We ended up getting computers and basically started the startup. And I got a co-founder at the time, and I really appreciated him. And we ended up bringing on another partner. He was kind of like an employee, and we said, hey, do you want to join and get partnership in the company? So there's 3 of us, and then we had 1 investor. Well, we were trying to raise money and source capital for some of our ideas for our portfolio because it's an entertainment company. And then sure enough, someone came by, and he was an entertainment producer, and he worked for a family office, and this family office had deep pockets. Well, one thing led to another. We started doing projects together, and they said, hey, how about we just buy you? And we worked it out, and it was an acqui-hire. It was not a straight out, here, write a check, Ed, see you later, right off in the sunset. It wasn't one of these companies that said, hey, we want to retire you, or I didn't have enough intellectual property, or the company couldn't stand alone without me being a part of it, and they wanted to bring my whole team on, so it was an acqui-hire, and they made it worth my while. I ended up writing a check, I can't remember, but I wrote a check to my investor, who I'm friends with to this day, and it was a great moment. Good because, one, I did it, and I got an investor a return on his investment. I think it was about a 9x investment. I can't remember the details, which wasn't the 10x, 100x investment or return that you're thinking about when it comes to unicorns, but it was good enough to get me a reputation, and I've been friends. I'm friends with this investor to this day. He's invested in other ventures. We've done other ventures together. We've invested together. We've started funds together. We've done a lot of stuff, and it's been great. I consider him a friend. He's mentored my kids. I mentor his kids. We're very, very tight, and it's a great relationship. The problem is I thought that I was bulletproof and I could keep going in every venture. Like I had the Midas touch. Everything I touched would turn to gold. And I failed venture after venture after venture catastrophically. But I ended up selling, and the family office wrote me a pretty good sized check. Some of it went to the investor, and then it went out to the partners. I was able to pay off my debt, and I was able to live a pretty lavish lifestyle, including the position that they gave me. And because I worked for the family office, we ended up buying other companies, and I had a really great time. I worked in .com 1.0, like I said. I had the relationship. I did about 6 other startups back in the day. I flew between Silicon Valley and Silicon Alley. It was a lot of fun. But then, of course, the dot-com bubble burst, and a lot of shenanigans occurred because the business models were flawed in .com 1.0, and that's where I began learning from a lot of mistakes. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I ended up with tons of stock options in startups that probably would have been successful today, but didn't have the right business model, and we were still babes running in the woods. We had no idea what we were doing, so it didn't work out. But I ended up moving back home, and my family, this is one of my regrets, said, my father particularly said, hey, you should buy a house. He just said, you have enough money, buy a house, make an investment. And I didn't listen to him. I just wanted to live this crazy lifestyle. I came back, reconnect with my family. I was really appreciative of that, all my old friends. And I just started splashing money around, and I started living like there was no tomorrow. I didn't own anything. I lived in my parents' basement. I paid nothing for rent and pretty much had no expenses, and I kind of lived a nice lifestyle, which I regret to this day. I should have saved money, should have invested, but hey, we're young, we're working things out, and so that was my first exit. Pretty good one. Then failure after failure started to happen, and I watched a video on YouTube. It was Stanford's course on how to start a startup by Y Combinator. And this is why I'm a big fan of Y Combinator, because they were formative. They were foundational to my startup career, because I watched those videos and I said, oh, I've been doing startups this whole time. That's the way that I think. I'm a founder. I devoured all the videos and I followed it step by step. And I know Y Combinator gets a lot of hate today. I read a lot of comments about them on YouTube and on Reddit, but they're so successful, right? They're to the point where they're so big, it doesn't really matter. But back then, it was Paul Graham, and he was starting things off, and Sam Altman was starting things off, and they were investing in Airbnb. And I remember watching the founder story and the class that DoorDash began to teach. And I said, man, I need to do this. So I went to go solve a problem that I had experienced. And previous to doing that venture, I bombed out of working at another family office and was doing quite well. But I experienced so many pain points of doing human capital management, about HR. And I said, I'm going to go solve those problems. And I decided to do that. So I was still at the family office and I was doing my exit out of there. We were buying companies and I was using family office money to invest in kind of boring Main Street small business companies, but it was a good learning experience. And I decided to try and solve the problems I was experiencing. And I did an MVP, but it wasn't a tech MVP. It was a manual MVP. And I'm selling it manually. And I made about $135,000, $145,000 manually. Then I sunk that money into the startup, and I got a dev shop and they created me MVP. And by then I knew exactly what I needed. Eventually I got a co-founder, a technical CTO came on board because I need to hire somebody in-house. And we just started making money, and we interviewed down at Y Combinator. I applied. They said, come on down. We had really great growth metrics. We had the right team. I had a CTO. Fabulous stuff. Went down to Y Combinator, and you might have heard this story, but I'll just explain it again, where they said, we really like your stuff. We think you're going to make a ton of money. I remember them saying, we think you're going to make millions, but we don't like the customer acquisition model that you have, your go-to-market strategy, because I was using channels. And it was Kevin Hale, and he sent me a really nice email after as well explaining, but he said, if you could figure out how to automate customer acquisition because salespeople do not scale, I was like, yeah, that's a really good idea. So me and the CTO, my co-founder, we got to work and we began creating an onboarding mechanism where I used the idea I heard from Box. I believe Aaron Levy was the CEO founder of Box. And he said, if you can take a side door, you can create something novel, like a little gimmicky widget that employees take into the company and show other employees. Other employees are going to say, wow, can I use that too? And then it starts going through the company, and eventually the company starts using the SaaS or whatever tool, software, enterprise software that you created. And so I did that. I ended up selling to employees for free. I did content marketing, and we ended up getting like 2 or 3 qualified companies come try our stuff, onboard themselves completely free every single day, and then the work started pouring in. Well, my number one customer did not like the fact that we were going to Y Combinator and I was raising money. I began explaining to them what I was trying to do, and I think they feel very threatened because if I went and got that investment, then Could we get too big for them? Would we not be able to service them anymore? And so they made an offer to buy my company. They said, come on board, buy a company. And I look back, too long did not read. The TLDR on this was that it was the best decision of my life and the worst decision that I regret to this day. And I'm right there in the middle and I waffle back and forth. Let me break this down for you. It was a good decision because back then I was burnt out. I was so tired and I had sacrificed so much for startups. My family relationship, my marriage was taking a hit. And my wife just flat out told me, I don't want you to go to Y Combinator and move down to San Francisco. Back then, this was before COVID, like in the early days. This is when we did interviews live. Like they flew us down as a 20-minute interview. She didn't want me to move down there for 3 months. And I had all these dreams. I'm going to be in TechCrunch, going to be a founder. And it really drained me emotionally, mentally. It wasn't good for my mental health. And I think a lot of founders experience that. So it was good that I was able to let the startup go and say, that's not going to be my identity anymore. What makes me think that I regret it is the way that I exited. I did not get an upfront balloon payment. I got monthly checks. I got a payout. It was a long earnout period. And I got an incentive package that if they sold the company, then I would get the balloon payment on the back end. It was a decision made in a little bit of desperation, and I had my own emotional issues. I had my own trauma, my own triggering to deal with because of the configuration. But from a straight business perspective, had I hung on to the startup and continued to work it with my co-founder, had I really started to learn the principles and apply a lot of what I know today, stayed on that course instead of getting wrapped up into Y Combinator, raising money, going VC, trying to build a unicorn, I think that it would have worked out a lot better and I would have been able to exit a lot better, like to the point where maybe I would have been able to put 8 figures into my pocket. And to me, that's something that I can see in hindsight. So I'm glad I made the decision so I could look back and analyze that. While at the same time, I'm just going to be straightforward. Yeah, there are weeks or there are months that I go, drat, as I look at it and I say, I shouldn't have sold when I did. It was too early. Don't get me wrong. I want to say once again, that startup treated me really well. I made a good deal of money. It's created the foundation that I am today, and that having 2 exits under my belt is going to be better than 1 exit by an order of magnitude, especially the SaaS company, the way that I exited. I learned so much, and I still get checks from that startup to this day. And it's been like 7 going on 8 years that I have made regular money. I can't complain about that whatsoever. It's allowed me to explore other things, but at the same time, it's made me realize that I'm a better advisor than I am a founder. I say this because I'm on the back 9 of my career. I like to say that a lot because I just want to talk to founders and advise them and share. I don't have the fortitude. I don't have the ability to pay the cost of opportunity to chase another unicorn. My portfolio, and I've done angel investing, I've done other entrepreneurial ventures. My portfolio is quite boring when it comes to being a founder that many of you might think, oh, wow, why am I following this guy? But I'm at that stage in my life where I want to make sure that my family's taken care of. I talk about this cost of opportunity. I've got way too much to lose, and I'm pretty comfortable. I'm not going to lie about that. Learning to be content with what you have has been one of the greatest lessons that I've learned, and it is out of that contentment I can work on relationships. My family suffered so much when I got a seed round and I went to China, and that was part of the package. I had to go and be the CEO in China, ended up joining their company, raised more money, and we started a fund, and we're working with big companies. Well, I worked for China from 2018 up until this year, 2024. So it's 6 years that I'm working for China. I had a lot of issues, like just my family relationship with my son. It was really tough. And thankfully, it's all kind of restored itself when it comes to the emotional stuff, but my health has taken a huge hit. You might have seen some other videos where I talked about my health, and I'm paying the price for that lifestyle that I lived, and I'm going to pay the price for the rest of my life. I have to now manage my health, and that's become priority, and that's the reason I'm hanging up the founder game when it comes to being a hardcore founder, raising VC, trying to go unicorn, having that big exit. Now, am I still raising capital? Yes. Am I still investing in startups? Yes. Am I still participating and advising? Yes. But not as my full-time gig. That's not my primary purpose. It really is all about my venture studio and having fun and picking and choosing my opportunities. But if you look back and you think about the exits, what I want you to take away from this is the importance of self-awareness. And it's not just about self-awareness about how you feel about yourself. It's about how the external environment is affecting you and what the external environment is all about. What are the macro conditions in which you are looking at exits, in which you're raising capital? You may not even be considering an exit right now. A lot of my YouTube audience are early stage founders, but you're ambitious. And what if? What if you happen to hit gold and you're sitting there and someone offers to buy your company, or you have the potential to exit? What if? And you have to leave yourself open. And so if you pay attention to your journey, who you are, what you're learning about yourself, your self-concept, not how you feel about yourself, but what you know about yourself and who you are as a founder, then you'll be able to make those decisions when the time comes, because you've loaded yourself up with the wisdom for those decisions. You're not going to be like a babe in the woods, and you're going to be thinking to yourself, wow, I can't believe I made that decision and regret it after, like I did. That's one way that I think you can avoid the mistakes that I've made, is to learn about yourself as you go. Develop that self-awareness, and not only learn to read yourself, but learn to read the room and how it's affecting the other people around you. How are you as a founder occurring to the people around you? The more you gain that information and you store it away and you let it simmer, and then it becomes part of your foundational who you are, your identity, and you don't allow your startup to become your identity. You don't allow investors to become your identity, or fame or fortune. You want to be sure that you know who you are, you have that rock solid foundation to make those decisions, and get those people around you that you can trust, that are okay with you being vulnerable, weak and strong, that give you joy, that give you emotional capacity, because that's what I did not have. I did not have those people in my life like I do now, and I could not make those decisions without being in my own tunnel vision and being triggered by my own stuff. If I just would have worked through my own issues back then, my own triggering, my own post-traumatic stress disorder, my own complex PTSD, then I probably would have made better decisions. And regret is a killer. It's like that one scene in Men in Black where Tommy Lee Jones, the older character, asked Will Smith, the younger agent, do you know what the most powerful force in the universe is? And Will Smith says, sugar. And he says, no, it's regret. I look back and I have regrets, but I have more benefits that I don't regret that overshadow that completely blow those out of the water, such as relationship with my family, the fulfillment, the contentment that I experience today, my own personal spiritual journey, how holistic I am in terms of looking at the world and what's important to me, and the relationships and all the founders that I helped, and the smiles and the faces and the aha moments. Those are so much bigger than my regrets. Thankfully, I've learned from those regrets, and you want to learn from those as well. That's it for this video. I hope it was helpful, give you some food for thought, introspection. Watch some of these other videos that I put on the screen, and I will see you in the next Founder Friday, if there is a next Founder Friday.